Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Peace, peace, peace. This your girl Tiffany. I'm back. I'm back again. And tonight I want to do a video about Runoko Rashidi. And it's very important to pay homage to him because he's an ancestor now. So I want to be able to talk about his work, talk about his legacy, his life, the things that he have done in the past. Well, thank you, Brother Umi. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So, yeah, I want to be able to talk about his biography, get into his legacy, get into his life, get into all the things that he have done as far as traveling across the world and also doing the lectures and the list of books that he has written and whatnot. So, real fast, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, share this channel, and all the great stuff. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, watching. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at the biography of Runoko Rashidi. Okay. Now, right here, under Wiki One, of course, again, that's a lot of people's favorite go-to website. And also, this is the website where I was able to get information about his biography. So it says Runoko Rashidi, who was born August 16th of 1954, and he died August the 2nd of 2021. He was a historian, essayist, author, and published lecturer based in Los Angeles, California, Paris, and Paris, France as well. He is the author of Introduction to the Study of African Classical Civilization and the editor of Unchained African Voices, a collection of poetry and poems by death row inmates at California San Quentin Maximum Security Prison. He was a member of the editorial board of Africology, the Journal of Pan-African Studies, and he held an honorary doctorate of divinity from Amarat Theological Seminary, which is in Los Angeles, California. He also supported the work of controversial scholars like the late Ivan Van Sertima. All right, here's the scope. So Rashidi was a writer and speaker who lectured on ancient Egypt. His belief in an African present in prehistoric America, Africans in antiquity, and the African present in Asia and other parts of the world. He is the author or editor of 18 books, including The African Present in Early Asia with Ivan Van Sertima, Black Star, The African Present in Early Europe, which came out in 2012, and African Star over Asia, The Black Present in the East, which came out in 2013. So he died on August the 2nd, 2021, while he was on tour in Egypt. So you guys can check out more information. Here's the reference at the bottom. And here's the further reading at the bottom as well. Okay. So also, I want to show you guys the list of books that he had available. And this is coming from the Google website. All right, so these are the list of books that Runoko Rashidi had written so far. Let me see if I can go back. All right, so this book right here is called The Black Image in Antiquity, My Global Journey, Asada Garvey, Uncovering the African Past, The Star Over Asia, and Black Star, the African Present in Early Europe. Okay. And so the one that I have currently with me is The African Present in Early Asia, which I'm going to go through with you guys. And then what I'm going to do is also play a video clip where he was in Hawaii giving a lecture back in 2000. So, again, peace to everybody in the chat. So let me go ahead and show you guys the book. All right, so right here, the name of the book is called African Present in Early Asia. Let me go ahead and zoom it up a little bit. That's the back cover. All right, so this book came out in 1985. And it says African Present in Early Asia 10th Anniversary Edition. So these are the table of contents. So they had to revitalize this book, or republish the book. They go in there and add on more information and stuff like that. Okay. So you guys can see. All right, so he has Wayne B. Chandler. This is the book that he did with Ivan Van Sertima. Jane Bronson, and Wallace Masby, and as many others. So he was very so influenced by Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. John Henry Clark, and Dr. John G. Jackson. All right, so here's this introduction. So let me go ahead and read the introduction real fast. It says, we now know, based on recent scientific study of DNA, that modern humanity originated in Africa, that the African people are the world's oldest original people, and that all modern humans can ultimately trace their ancestral roots back to Africa. Were it not for the primordial migrations of early African people, humanity would have remained physically Africoid, and the rest of the world outside of the African continent absent of human life. Since the first modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, in Asia were of African birth, the African present in ancient Asia can therefore be demonstrated through the history of the Black population that have inhabited the Asian land mass within the span of modern humanity. But not only were African people the first inhabitants of Asia, there is abundant evidence to show that Black people within document historical periods created or influenced some of ancient Asia's most important and enduring high cultures. All right, so then he goes on to say, African Present in Early Asia, edited by Runoko Rashidi and Ivan Van Sertima, is the most comprehensive publication of its type in existing. It is a project involving the work of more than 20 contributors. It is ambitious in its scope and pioneering in its approach, in the sense that there were few real blueprints or detailed guidelines to follow. It is an effort it is an effort of reconstruction and definition. It is a distinct and essentially unique publication in the sense that by African present in Asia, we are referencing all of the Black population that have people Asia within both the prehistoric and historic period. We are using the words African and Black interchangeably as synonyms. This includes African people as the first modern humans in Asia, the subsequent migration and movements of African people impacting the ancestral character and content of classical Asian civilization, and the later involuntary arrival of African people in Asia resulting from slavery. All right, so it says, for well over a century, Western historians, ethnologists, anthropologists, archaeologists, and such other specialists have generally and often arbitrarily used terms as Negroid, Proto-Negroid, Proto-Australoid, Negrite, and Negrito in labeling population in Asia with Africoid phenotypes and African cultural traits and historical tradition. This has especially been the case with Black population in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Far East Asia. In Southwest Asia, on the other hand, terms like Hamites, Africans, Mediterraneans, and the brown race have commonly been employed in denoting clearly discernible Black population. In this work, we have chose to reject such deliberately confusing nomenclature as obsolete and invalid, unscientific, and racially motivated. All right, so let's go. Hmm. All right, so let's go down here. Africans in early Asian civilization, a historical overview. The Blackheads of Sumer. So ancient Sumer, the biblical land of Shinar, was the formative civilizing influence of early West Asia, flourishing during the 3rd millennium BC. Sumer set the tone and established the guideline for the kingdoms and empires which succeeded her, frequently designated as or linked with Chaldea and Babylonia. Sumer embraced the Tigris and Euphrates River valley from the base of the Persian Gulf north to the Akkad, a distance of about 300 miles. All right. So while Sumer's many cultural achievements are much celebrated, the important question of her ethnic composition is frequently glossed over or left out of the discussion altogether. While it would be foolish to assert that Sumer's inhabitants were homogeneous or exclusive to any particular racial type, it seems rather obvious that the bright light of Sumerian civilization can only be attributed to the arrival of Black migrants from Africa's Nile Valley. In their own literature, the Sumerians called themselves the Blackheads and were only one of the numerous Neolithic Kushite colonies implanted in early Asia. A survey of the available Sumerian anthropological data is strongly supportive of this. In 1926 and again 1928, the Field Museum and Oxford University conducted extensive joint excavation in northern Sumer. At the Diggs conclusion that at the Diggs conclusion, they stated that the earliest historical Kriana are from Jemed Nasar, 18 miles northeast of Kish, and those from Y Trench at Kish. The forehead is retreating. The brow ridges, the brow ridge are always prominent, and the cheekbones rather wide. The nose is broad, in some cases inclining to extreme. What's this word? Platerine. Although the face has seldom survived. This is the type described by Sergi Gufarida Riguri and Fleury, and named the Euro-African type. All right, so let's go on and see what they're talking about. An additional publication on the excavation at Kish, T.K. Penniman, lists 3 distinct cranial groups. First, there is Euro-African in ancient time. The type is found in Mesopotamia and Egypt, may be compared with the Kembe Kapale skull. It is possible identical with men who lived in the high desert west of the Nile in a Paleolithic times and is the type seen in the familiar portrait statue of Ramesses II. Okay, so right here, here's a statue, and it says Africoid Governor Gudea of Lagash, circa 2150 BC, courtesy of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. All right. All right, so, and I'm just going to read this part right here. It says the third dynasty of Ur or Ur, for most of her history, Sumer consists of a number of largely independent city-states. Each such entity contained a comparatively large urban center around which were the smaller satellite towns and villages at frequent intervals. However, the Sumerian city-states coalesced to form powerful unified kingdoms led by provincial leaders endowed with divine status. Such was the case during Ur's or Ur's third dynasty. Ur itself, while not the earliest of the great Sumerian city, was arguably the most important. At her height, Ur covered more than 4 square miles, quite large for the time. And while the third dynasty was her most illustrious era, written records acknowledge her existence until 440 BC. The third dynasty itself lasted for nearly 2112 to 2015 BC, under the reign of 5 brilliant rulers who elevated Ur to the status of a great empire. All right, so again, so here's another picture that he used, the Jewish prisoners taken captive in Palestine by the Assyrians. Okay, so just to give a little overview on that, let's go down to where it says Herodic Elam. So Elam was the first high culture of Iran. It had many affinities with Sumer and shared her eastern border. The country was divided into 2 parts, Ashan and the mountainous north, and Susanna with its capital of Susa in the south. The early Elamites seem to have titled their land Azan Susunaka, with the term Elam perhaps introduced by the early Hebrew writers. I mean, as it is to be expected, a number of scholars, Elliott Smith, demonstrated numerous similarities between the material cultures and early Elam and the Nile Valley, including arrowheads, polished stone implements, pressure flaking, mace heads, scripts, pottery forms, stone base, female figurines, art motifs, and metal mirrors. The women of Elam, like their Nile Valley contemporaries and women in early Black society in general, held significant stature both as mortal and goddesses. The Elamite woman's sphere of activity was not limited to the home. She signed documents, conducted important business transactions, inherited and willed fortunes, brought suits to the courts of law, and controlled servants. In early Elamite documents, there is frequent mention of the mothers, sisters, and daughter of the rulers. The existing evidence points to a matrilineal character of the royal succession. Again, here's another picture. So, all right. All right, so let me go ahead and read one more. It says, Elamic scholar George C. Cameron called attention to Carisha, a form of the mother goddess, and claims that the hundreds of clay statuettes of this deity found in the course of the Susa excavation bespeak her whom the common people of Elam really worship. Walter Hines, in a significant work, The Lost World of Elam, is in complete harmony with Qumran. Pride of place in this world was taken by a goddess, and this is typical of Elam. The treaty we have mentioned opens with the following appeal: "Hear, goddess Penikar, and you good gods of heaven." Later, too, the Elamites saw Penikar as the mistress of heaven endowed with the power to curse, and her name often forms a part of proper names. The very fact that preceding was given to a goddess who stood above and apart from the other Elamite gods indicates a matriarchal approach in the devotees of this religion. In the third millennium, these great mothers of the gods still held undisputed sway at the head of the Elamite pantheon. All right. All right, then. So, okay. So, again, that book was going into the earliest period in time of the Africans in Asia. So that's what, based off of Dr. Runoko Rashidi research, along with Ivan Van Cernema. Now, a lot of information may have changed over a period of time, okay? Because we're in the age of technology, we're in the age of science, where information has been upgraded. So everything is not, everything's not always consistent, okay? So there might be some information in the book that may be outdated, all right? Especially with regard to the information about Africans in Asia. So it might be some information that's outdated in the book, all right? But at that time period, that was his research, and that's where he was at with it, and that was the conclusion that he had drawn based on the information that was presented to him, and based on his studies, because you got to remember he was an anthropologist as well. All right, so if you guys want to check out this book, you go ahead and do so. The title of this book is called "The African President in Early Asia." So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna leave it right there for you guys to see it. So that's the name of the book. Okay. Peace, Mark. How you doing? Peace, Tavo. Peace, Jerome. Peace, Bayasa. Well, I'm just gonna call you Gullah. And peace, Brother Umi. So peace to everybody. Peace to everybody that's coming in, slide through. Appreciate it. All right, so that's the information right there. That's the book. So you guys can look that book up for yourself if you need to. You could probably get it on Amazon, of course, and you can go to your local black bookstore if you have any black bookstores where you at. If not, you might can find it at Barnes and Nobles. But yeah, check it out at your local black bookstores. All right. Okay. So I want to go ahead and play the video by Brother Runoko Rashidi. Just can't find the one. Just can't. All right, so here's the video. I'm gonna go ahead and play the video for you guys. So this video here, he was in Hawaii, okay, on March the 3rd, 2000. So I'm not gonna play all of it. The video is an hour and 42 minutes long. So I'm already at the 11-minute mark. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start from the very beginning. And then I'm going to stop party at the 18-minute mark. Well, no, maybe at the 15-minute mark, I'm gonna stop. All right. So let me go ahead and get started. Oh, by the way, it's the archives of Asa Hiller. So this is one of Asa Hiller's archive, which is at the Atlanta University Center. So yeah. So he has worked with a lot of people. He has worked with Asa Hiller. He has worked with Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. John G. Jackson. Of course, Ivan Van Sertima, many others. All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Aloha. I'm very, very pleased to be here. And let me begin by thanking the traditional owners of this land for allowing me to be here. And in the African tradition, what we do when we begin a program is to, first of all, acknowledge all the elders in the room, and you pay your respects, and then you request the permission of the elders to speak. Do I have your permission? Thank you. I wish to thank the University of Hawaii and all the various departments, student organizations, faculty, community organizations for having me out again. Particularly grateful to Mr. Tom Mountain, who more than anybody initiated this program. Now, I spoke here last year, and last year I had just gotten back, not too long ago, gotten back anyway from Australia. And I did a presentation on the Black presence in Australia and the Pacific Islands. In fact, I think it was called Looking at Australia and the Pacific Islands Through African Eyes. And that's something rather new. Now, in addition to Australia, the two other areas that I've expressed a real strong concern with, one is the Black presence in the Pacific, specifically Melanesia. And as Tom mentioned, I'm on my way to Fiji. I have about a flight to catch in about 4 hours. And the other, of course, is the Black presence in India. Now, India has always been intriguing to me because, believe it or not, it has the largest concentration of Black people in any one country in the world. I've had an opportunity to travel there on 3 occasions, to be with the Dravidians in the south, the people called the Dalits or the Untouchables, and also the tribal people. And I'm going to go into that in some detail. I want to give an overview as to who are the Dalits, what is their relationship to Africa, what are their present living conditions and how they came to be in that situation. And then I want to show you some visuals based on my firsthand experiences there. First of all, I really cannot say, well, first of all, the Dalit. And I want to give some background in India. The term Dalit means crushed, broken, and oppressed. And this is a term that is applied to, through self-definition, of people sometimes called untouchables and sometimes called outcasts. And sometimes they were referred to as pariahs. And Mohandas Gandhi called them Harijan, which means children of God. And depending on what part of India they are in, they have individual names. Now, initially, I wonder if I should begin the visuals. Let's start with the visuals. Let's do it like that. Now, this piece takes us to the beginning of classical Indian civilization. Can everybody hear me? This photograph is from a city called Mohenjo-Daro, Mohenjo-Daro. That means in Urdu, the mound of the dead. And these are the remains of an ancient city, one of hundreds of such sites found along the Indus River Valley. And this takes us to what might be called classical Indian civilization. Now you have to keep in mind that until I don't know if it's 47 or 48, when India was partitioned by the British, that Pakistan, the country now called Bangladesh, and India were one country. Okay, so you have what might be called Greater India. And along the banks of the Indus River, most of which is in modern day Pakistan, a great and flourishing civilization developed. And it was developed by Black people, commonly called Dravidians. Today, they are concentrated primarily in the South. This city, or the Indus Valley civilization per se, I guess you might say is a contemporary with the civilization of the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley and the Nile River Valley in Africa. Civilizations, early classical civilizations, as you know, tend to develop along the banks of rivers because rivers facilitate transportation, irrigation, and communication. And consequently, civilization is a byproduct. And when I talk about classical civilization, just to give you a working definition, I'm talking about a high culture characterized by urbanization, that is to say, that people live in cities, towns, and villages, number one. Number two, that they practice agricultural science. Number three, they have writing systems or scripts, whether it be cuneiform or what is commonly called the hieroglyphics or the Medu Neter, which is ancient Egyptian for the divine speech. And then you have metallurgy, the use of metal weapons and tools. When I talk about classical civilization, I'm gonna need some water or something to drink to, if you please. I'm talking about something with those component parts. Now, this begins about 3000 BC, and it probably hits its peak about 2300 BC, and by 1500 BC, it is in its last stages in a period of steep decline. Now, this city is rather remarkable, and again, there are a number of them. This, again, is Mohenjo-Daro. There's another one called Harappa, Harappa. There's another one called Chandhu-Daro. There's another one called Lothal. And there are Kalabangam is another one. And the major excavations begin there, I think, in the 1920s. Now, these cities are remarkable for their innovations at that time. For example, you have a city characterized by multiple levels, obviously well-designed in advance. What do you call it? Civic engineering or city engineering, advanced engineering. You have standard and uniform weights and measures, locking systems. You have a hydraulic system, a sewage system characterized by hot and cold running water, flushing toilets and trash chutes. They had a game similar to dice. They had a game similar to chess. And from what we can see, although we do have some difficulty with this because the script of the Indus Valley civilization has not been effectively deciphered, the people who have worked on it, the more serious people, conclude that it is related to the Dravidian scripts in South India. It would seem like the mother goddess was very important, and that God, in fact, may have been worshipped in a female form. An agricultural society and a society based largely on trade, larger in size than Egypt of the pharaohs and the Sumerian civilization of the Tigris-Euphrates put together. It was made of burnt brick. And in order to produce these cities, eventually wide tracts of land were deforested or denuded of their trees in order to create these cities. And again, they developed from about 3000 BC to about 1500 BC. I did bring a few copies of my book that I edited with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima of Rutgers University, called The African Presence in Early America. And much of this information with extensive references are listed there. So these Black people had a good thing going on. They must have migrated from Africa a long, long time ago. Whenever I'm doing a presentation, there's another set of threes that have to be taken into consideration, because we're going to be dealing largely with Black people tonight, although not exclusively. But if you want to understand the role or history of Black people throughout the world, you also need to look at three phases. Number one, that humanity itself began in Africa, that there's only one race, and that's the human race, which has an African origin. And these Africans, based on studies of mitochondrial DNA in particular, begin to filter out of Africa over 100,000 years ago. And that African people are, in fact, the aboriginal people of this planet. That the first people to go into Asia, the first people to go into Europe, the first people to go into Australia, the islands of the Pacific, and even the Western Hemisphere are Black folk, are Africans. Now, I know that's something that is very difficult for a lot of people to deal with, because of the way we are taught to view Africa. I know I'm 45 years old now. When I was a child, if you'd call me an African, those were fighting words, because of my perception of Africa, a land of savages and Black men running around with big naturals, or afros as they're called now, and bones in their noses, chasing lions and tigers, and being chased by King Kong and Jane, and looking for a missionary for dinner. That was my image of Africa. But within the last 15 years in particular, all that has been turned upside down. And we begin to see Africa as the birthplace of humanity itself. And that, again, there's only one race. There may be various ethnic groups, but there's one race. And these Africans went everywhere. And then you have the role that African people have played in the development of classical civilizations, not just in Africa, although that's a battleground too. I mean, even the idea that Egypt is an African civilization, Egypt of the pharaohs, is still very unpalatable for a lot of people. Egypt is in Africa. It's always been in Africa. And as far as I know, it will always be in Africa. We don't argue as to whether or not Greek and Roman civilization was European or Chinese civilization was Asian. But when it comes to Africa and great achievements, there's a need to seek a foreign origin. And then, of course, the role that African people have played, or actually have been the victims of in terms of enslavement, that for hundreds of years, African people were captured in Africa and enslaved and taken all over the world. And these three movements account for the spread of Black people worldwide. So the Indus Valley civilization puts us smack dab in the middle. And later on, I will show you some images as to what I think those first settlers or migrants actually look like. Now, the civilization flourished for more than 1,000 years, but history, you might say, is the movements of people. And around, we'll say between 2000 BC, for the next 1,000 years, you have a major series of movements coming out of Central Asia and Eastern Europe, what is sometimes called the steppe land. And this movement consisted primarily of what we might call linguistically Indo-Europeans. These are nomadic people. They have domesticated the horse. They've developed a powerful compound bow and arrow. They have a light spoked-wheel chariot. And for whatever reasons, like a massive human juggernaut, waves of these Indo-Europeans, in India they're to be called Aryans, begin to be drawn towards the rich agricultural civilizations in the South, these river-based civilizations. And the world has not been the same since. Now, this is extremely important. Now, some of these folks were drawn to the Indus Valley, and they came to be called Aryans. They introduced a language that eventually we will call Sanskrit. And they savagely attacked, oh boy, they savagely attacked this Indus Valley civilization. And it is well documented in early texts, particularly the Rig Veda. They even referred to the people that they encountered as being black-skinned, as being snub-nosed. They talked about their lips. Now, one of the major distinctions, however, between the black people of this part of the world and black folks in much of Africa today is the texture of the hair. Whereas black people in Africa have tightly curled hair,
All right, so now that's the video of Dr. Runoko Rashidi. He was in Hawaii giving a lecture about the African people in Asia and the Pacific Islands and places like that. So that was the ancestor video. May he rest in peace, and may his legacy continues to live on. So I encourage people to check out his work, and just either compare and contrast the information, do some type of look for primary evidence, vet the source. You know what I'm saying? That's all you can do. You can vet the source. You can, look for primary evidence. It's very important that people get involved in doing that as well. So make sure that when you read a material, always make sure you go back and look for the references in the back of the book. Always look for the citation. Look for where you can go find the information. Look where the information is at, and just compare and contrast the information. So, but until then, y'all, I thank you guys so much. For those of you that were watching, thank you for the people that's in the chat. I really appreciate that a lot. So until next time, this your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. So with that being said, may peace and power and elevation be to all you. Please be safe. Please be careful. All right. And I will connect with you guys later. All right. Peace.